Welcome to Unleashed at Work and Home, the show dedicated to helping veterinarians, vet techs, dog trainers, shelter and rescue workers, pet sitters, and all the other animal crazy pet professionals manage their stress and find more joy. I'm your host, Colleen Pilar, and I'm thrilled you're here with us today. Make sure you hit the subscribe button on your favorite app so that you won't miss a single episode. This episode is brought to you by our free community, the Circle of Resilient and Thriving Pet Professionals. If you like the ideas shared here, then you're invited to continue the conversation with other lifelong learners in the community. You can find out more at colleenpilar.com. It's the perfect place for you to learn cool stuff, feel good, and take action to create the life you love. Come join us. Welcome back to Unleashed at Work and Home. My guest today is Kim Cardeccia. Did I say that right, Kim?
Close, Cardeccia.
Cardeccia. I usually check beforehand, and then I thought I should ask, and I didn't. So not only is your name pronounced not quite the way I'd expect, you're also not what we would consider your typical pet professional. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your work?
Sure. I am a licensed professional counselor, and I'm also a horse girl. And probably horse girl could be the biggest thing that I am in this world. And what happened kind of organically, I was teaching riding lessons as well as I had taught elementary phys ed for 10 years. I went back, got my master's, decided to open a private counseling practice. And those two things, teaching riding lessons, working with people and their horses, and the counseling merged together in just the most profound way and unexpected. So I am someone that, through working with horses, teach people how to shine brightly and lead their lives in the direction that they choose.
And how does one do that with horses?
Well, horses are really, really good at teaching us how to emotionally regulate and create a path forward if we're interested in being compassionate leaders with them and focusing on a bond that's more about partnership and harmony than compliance, which is where I think I fit in with you and your work.
Yeah, it's so interesting working with animals when it's invitation and connection and seeing how really minor changes in our own behavior and stance can have significant ripples in how someone else responds to us. And I think animals can show us that in real time very quickly and teach us actually that we can be interesting just in and of ourselves. Like, it's such a compliment when an animal says, "Oh, I'd like to approach you. I'm choosing to approach you because you're interesting to me."
Yes. And I think a little offshoot, I have over the last year and a half, I've been working a lot with donkeys at a rescue, which they're a newer fascination for me. And they're similar to horses and different. And my job as a volunteer at the rescue, besides kind of leading mindfulness and presence workshops, is to make friends with the donkeys. Because there are some there that have either been mistreated, I don't know, I guess socialized could be a word that we could use. And so they have a hard time being around people. So it's worthwhile not only to the rescue, to the donkeys, and to me to just be and hold that space of compassionate security. And I mean, trust. And I know it's going to go deeper over the years, Colleen, but I have gotten such an appreciation for trust and building that with any animal that we work with. Because part of what helped me become even better with horses was adopting an incredibly reactive dog, which I know you understand about. Yeah. Well, I I had dabbled a little bit in like parks and recreation. I don't know if they called it obedience or what. It was, just dog training 101. I had had dogs all my life. I even had a dog that I took through some agility for just for fun. And when I got a dog that I didn't know what to do with, but I knew that a lot of what I was being told to do was, the language would be make the dog do this, or, somehow confine, restraint, intimidate would not work with this dog at all. And so I had to, and fortunately, I was at a point in my life where I love being a beginner. I've kind of, fortunately, because I've been knocked around so many times, because I tell you what, when I was a teenager, I knew everything. I knew everything about horses. And then all of a sudden I graduated and started to work for a professional in the dressage world and realized I really didn't know anything. But anyhow, back to my dog. So I started to learn how to let him make choices from a phenomenal trainer. And that helped me be able to extend even more grace to my horses. And so much of it, I think, comes down to slowing down and listening. Or, of course, we have to depend. Some people don't understand. And it always takes me by surprise when I say, you have to listen to your horse, that I'm not talking about just with your ears.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think those of us and a lot of the people that I work with, and probably you too, we're incredibly empathic, highly sensitive, introverts. Um, Yet sometimes we can be thrust in these positions where we have to address groups of people or, depend on figuring out how to be around someone that's in a real chaotic energy, like maybe we're trying to teach them or conduct a session, and not let their energy move us out of our grounded, calm space. And so I find I work quite a bit with facilitators too, because most of us are always looking to get better and go deeper. And if we don't, I know self-care, sometimes people roll their eyes and whatever, but if we don't learn how to really, it's like energetic hygiene almost.
Yeah.
If we don't learn that, we're not going to be able to offer our best to animals, to people, to ourselves.
I like the phrase energetic hygiene. And I think a little bit like listening isn't just about your ears. I think the whole concept of energy, some people immediately get, and some people don't. And that experience of being around somebody who is dysregulated and whether or not it's affecting us. For most of us, we're swept into it before we have any idea that we're being kind of overtaken by someone else's energy and way of being. And to think of it as energetic hygiene is, I just like the label. It kind of works for me on this level of just like, this is something we have to do. Um, and I didn't know how to do any of that in the years I was dog training. I really didn't even understand that it was possible. Like I knew that I was so sensitive to all of that and that my empathy was really my biggest gift, but I didn't know how to protect it or myself. And so I experienced a lot of time of feeling like I wasn't good enough and I couldn't do enough because I was so completely drained by other people's emotions and experiences and ways of being. Did you intend to step into that field of energetic hygiene, or did it just kind of evolve as you developed your counseling practice and also because of your love? Like, was there a design here, or did this just come together?
I think it was kind of both. When I first entered publicly, I would go to horse expos and speak a lot on rider confidence, because one of the things that I started to recognize before I officially combined anything was how many horse owners, especially women, age like 30 to 70 something, because I was attracting quite an interesting group. A lot of these women were facing something every time they were with a horse, anywhere from apprehension to trauma. The fear, whether it was of the actual horse or whether it was just fear of not being good enough. Physiologically, that energy expresses itself, on that continuum. And so I started to speak at expos about, basically how we could work through our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors to create more confidence. And at that time, I didn't really I called it our state. And I still could label it that, but I also have learned and kind of gone a little woo sometimes, I guess. And, I could call it our vibrational state, because I think it's heart math. We all have an energetic field, and that is how a lot of us that depend on what our empathy, our empath skills, we can communicate a lot that way. And so if we're not really aware of that, we can't influence in the same way. So I started going deeper into it, recognizing that for a lot of people, that was how they could make their difference.
Yeah. It's an interesting piece. And you can see how rider confidence would then become something that had ripple effects in other areas of their life. That they really just want to be a better rider.
Yes,
but also...
yes. Well, because something that I think sometimes people roll their eyes when they've been around me for a while, because I say it so often, is the more time we spend in an emotional state, the easier it is to get there. And of course, that's because we're building neural pathways and we're creating a new familiar for ourselves. And so if you start around a horse, around a dog, around nature, and you create that experience, not only have you spent more time there, but the more physical senses we can invoke in that experience, we can recreate it. Like, you're stuck in traffic, you're going to be late, and you can take yourself. I like to comb my horses a lot. And, I offer that to clients too. Take yourself back to where you're touching the horse, you're feeling their coat, you're hearing maybe the birds chirp, and if the horse is eating hay, the munching, the smells. The more of that we can bring into the moment, the more we can influence how we're feeling, which that's, the wavelength, the frequency that we're offering out into the world.
Yeah. I imagine your 10-year-old self would be thrilled out of her mind to know that this is what you're doing.
Oh,
is that
true? Gosh, I never thought of it. Oh my gosh, my 10-year-old self, if I just had a horse, I would have been over the moon. But yeah, because when you say that, sometimes I use 5, but 10 works too. I'm sure it's the same way in a lot of the fields where we work closely with animals. I don't know how I fell in love with horses, because I was born in Detroit. I was born in a city, didn't move out to a township till I was 4. But according to my parents, he was the first word I said. So I don't know how it got in there. And then later, oh, well, you have horses because you ride them. And then now, don't get me wrong, I love riding. But riding wasn't what I fell in love with. Horses were what I fell in love with. And in an industry, when you're in hardcore training or showing, which I was always on the outskirts, but I was exposed to that I don't even know, that element that I can't think of the atmosphere. You might know the word that I'm meaning that I just lost.
Well,
Culture?
her nose is crinkling. I don't know what the word is, but as her hands are coming together, kind of grabbing something, and her nose is crinkling. So
Yeah,
that
like
element, that
invite.
atmosphere.
Yeah. So being exposed to that, sometimes the love of the horse gets squashed out because it would be, it's very commonplace. Well, if your skills improve and your horse is limited physiologically, well, you sell that horse and you get another one.
Hmm.
And when I heard things like that, my heart was just like, oh no, no,
Hmm.
I don't like that. I don't know if I want to be a part of that. And I think, and especially because I know you work a lot with people whose livelihood depends on their work with animals. And sometimes those of us that are looking for that more compassionate guidance and that the invitation rather than compliance way of being and leading, a lot sometimes, we can get smacked around a lot or called fluffy or not taken seriously. And um, it would be one thing if it were just, okay, fine, you don't like me, I'll go join this clubhouse over here. But when we're trying to make money,
Yeah.
yeah, it can be real confusing sometimes, I think, unless you have a really supportive community.
Yeah. I think the importance of community really matters and helps with that. There's a piece that you're saying there that's kind of rattling around in my head. There is a view that this way of being in connection with animals can be soft or fluffy or not rigorous or not effective. It's sort of like just coddling kind of view, which I don't think
Mhm.
is accurate. Like there is a teaching element that respects both the learner and the goals of the human who are trying, so the animal, the horse or the dog or the cat or whatever we're talking about needs to be really respected in the learning process, while recognizing that the human who's paying the bill has a specific goal. Please get my dog to stop jumping up and stealing food off the counter. And that some of the more coercive techniques seem better in that they're stricter, more forceful, more, like uh, assertive. And so that idea of when you're trying to make money and you come in saying we're going to show up with respect for the animal, and pop culture says no, you need to be in charge, the leader, dominant, the head of the pack, all that silly stuff. Um, Having a community, having people who understand what it is you're doing, why you're doing it, how it works, that it works, uh, I think is so, so helpful because the actual individuals that I meet are not light and fluffy. They're fascinating, interesting, multifaceted people who may veer a little to the woo or be super creative and intelligent, but they're really grounded in their truth and their knowing. They're not they're not easily thrown off course. They're not people who are are so easily swayed by whatever. And I think that there's kind of a perception of people as if they are a little flighty. And that's not been my experience in working with any of the people who choose to be really aligned with their truth, their values, and their energy in this work.
Yes. And aligned, that is a word I resonate with so deeply. And I think, you know, so much of what people are searching for a lot of the time comes from um it comes from a fear because I have this problem and I need it solved yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to see dramatic results fast. And I think, when you're talking about a lot of the professionals that are more honoring of the essence of animals and humans also, they're willing to wait.
Mm-hmm.
They're willing to be patient. And because I think what we do is we give sovereignty to the other dog, cat, horse, whatever, because we are letting them make their choices. And we have, like the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of our society, grades in school, money, lots of other things that are coming to mind right now, but it's based on that comparison and that competitive nature. And so I think, again, a lot of people that are really secure in their way of offering their brightness to the world have gotten there because they've had to regain their balance so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we learn how to regain our balance when we're pushed off, and kind of experimenting. Oh, well, what if I try things that way? I don't really like that. I don't think I'm going to do that again. And I'm going to have the courage to tell this mentor that, no, that's not my way. That can be the hard part.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you've had, the more trips we all get around the sun, the easier it is to say, no, sorry, not for me. But that can be really hard when we're first starting out, because most of us, what we really, really want to do is be really good at what we do because we love animals so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can remember there was a movie out. It was probably like 6 years ago or so, and it was about a sector of the horse training industry that I was not really drawn to. I'm still not really drawn to. I think in all transparency, they start horses way too young, way too hard. Physically, a lot of them are forced to deal with things because of the human. Anyhow, but in the trailer of this movie, there was, I don't know, she was probably 20 something trainer that was getting emotional. And she was saying, what I would love most of all is to be able to be standing in a herd of horses. And if they had to pick a trainer, they would come to me. And I was like, oh, that I want to see. And the disappointment, because that wasn't even in the movie, that little clip. And yeah, there was nothing about the movie that really would have shown you that. But just hearing that helped me sink a little deeper into, yeah, you know what? I have to pay attention when I see that look of discomfort on my horse's face.
Yeah.
I have to pay attention. I will pay attention, and I will offer them something different. And I think, going back to talking about people that seem like they're really secure because we are aligned with our values. I mean, yeah, we get knocked around, we get out of alignment too. And that's the place where animals can help us return to our authentic way of being, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that everybody's going to get knocked out of alignment. Like, that's part of life. We're going to get knocked out of alignment in the course of a single day. And then, like, through periods of, this is a stressful period, and this is, that it will happen more or more significantly.
Yeah, that's why we need emotional hygiene.
That is why we need emotional hygiene. And I think that is the magic of animals, is that they, for those of us for whom it works, which is everyone in this listening audience, they can bring us back into some of that alignment. Sometimes I think the number one reason people have dogs is because if you have a dog, you're going to laugh every day. Like, you just are. Something's going to happen, and it's going to make you laugh, because it's this moment where I just think, oh my God, I love you so much. And that physical experience that I have all the way through my body, but it can be such a tiny little thing. But it's coming back to myself, but by doesn't even have to be in relationship with the dog. It can be just like witnessing the dog being themselves. The other day, my dog was running in the backyard, and I said to my husband, "Oh my God, I love when she runs." And she doesn't run that much. She's like an older, kind of laid back dog. And when she runs, my heart is just like bigger than my body. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's just for us. Many of us can come back into ourselves by seeing an animal in themselves, like seeing her as herself, just being herself, helps me
Mm-hmm.
come back to who I am.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes.
I feel like today in this conversation, you're helping me connect some dots that I hadn't really connected before. It's sort of interesting. I have no idea if I'm making any sense to you or anyone else, but things are
You're making
clicking
sense
for
to
me.
me. Well, that's exciting.
Yeah. I want to go back to words you said a few minutes ago that I just thought were so beautiful. Offering their brightness to the world. When the people are offering their brightness to the world. And often that's because they've learned how to regain their balance so often and have the courage to say, sorry, not for me. But the phrase of offering their brightness to the world, if all of us were able to feel that what we're doing is offering our brightness to the world, what do you think the ripple of that might be?
Oh, I think, well, the ripple would be so much more happiness. There's no limit to happy,
Yeah.
but I think because, some of us are more in tuned to the energetic vibe of other people. We're more empathic, but everybody has it. It's how humans are wired, animals are wired. And when we're brighter, it allows other people to feel that, to sense it. I think, some of the mirror neurons, we reflect that back
Mhm.
too. And if, I mean, I know I get accused a lot of being kind of Pollyanna and too optimistic, but I think the more that we share good in the world, there's a ripple effect, and people people end up hurting other people when they're hurting, or
Yeah.
when they're wounded, or they feel like they can't get enough. And when they feel like they can't get enough, it's because they feel like they aren't enough.
Yeah.
And so if we all could just feel better, because we were put here for a reason.
Hmm.
And if we can believe in that and go up from there, there's so much more beauty in the world.
One of the beliefs that I've noticed some of my clients struggle with is a feeling that if they stop being so hard on themselves, they might just stop all activity. Like they might just become slugs and sloths. And I say, no, 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 no. People who feel good do good. Like you're more inspired. There's more available to you when you're
Hmm.
not busy berating yourself or doing things wrong or wondering what everyone's thinking about you. But first off, do you agree that if people can feel good about themselves and actually feel that they are offering their brightness to the world, that they will do more, have more energy, more output, more connection, more. And then what do you say if you encounter that kind of belief with your clients?
Well, to the first part, 1,000%, yes, absolutely. To offering more good in the world. And because we're all going to come across that, because we all have this thing called the reticular activating system, right? And I know you know that, because I think I've read in your newsletter, even if you haven't said those words verbatim, it's in there, because our nervous system is still built for us to survive when we live more like cavemen.
Hmm.
So we're our brains are always going to be paying attention to what could hurt us and resist change immensely, because change can be dangerous and we can get ourselves killed. And we have to watch out for others that can hurt us, or we could be killed, which is sometimes where the horses, being their prey nature, they can give us lots of illustrations for that. But I think if we're sometimes just being aware, okay, that I don't have to subscribe to that thought that just popped in my head. A lot of times, if we could be taught in high school, we didn't have to believe all our thoughts. Think of how different our lives could have been. And when we're tired, we are more likely to have those negative thoughts. Or even if we've had a really good day or a real good session with clients or a real good session with our animals, training or interacting, whatever you want to call it, we've expanded. And everything, animals, people, universe, it breathes, it expands, and then it contracts, it exhales. And sometimes we can mistake that exhale as, oh, something's wrong because I don't feel as good as I did before. Sometimes, because there can also, when you do your best work in the world and offer their brightness, sometimes there's a little adrenaline in there too. And so, we've got all these chemicals going around and around in our brain, and kind of like lactic acid in your muscles too. We have to let that drain, in essence, give that time to flush out. And sometimes if we just recognize we can't, even though it feels so good, we can't sustain, because it would be like driving your car 99 miles an hour. At some point in time, you're going to run out of gas, if nothing else. So you have to, and you, at least as of yet, they don't have a way to gas up while you're driving. So, and so I can use an analogy like that sometimes to help people recognize that you're not failing because you don't always feel like you're walking on not even cloud 9, cloud 99. It's okay to breathe and regroup, because that is also the time, I think, when our intuition kicks in too, when we're a little more still in our body. And of course, when our minds are still. And that's because most of us here too are very creative. And that's when more inspiration bubbles up. So I kind of like to term when it feels like, uh-oh, I'm dropping or I'm slipping or I'm not doing good enough. Okay, that's the replenishing time. That's the time to let the new and different come in, which is what sparks us to always be better and go deeper.
Yeah. So you're making me think of the other day. I had a day when my husband said, "What's up with you?" And I said, I don't know. There's just no oomph. He said, "What does that mean?" And I'm like, well, I have things I feel like I should be doing, but I'm not doing them. I just don't really know.
Shoulds, no shoulds.
Yeah. And I said, I think I'm just going to go in my office. And my office is divided in half. So half has a desk and all my computer stuff. And then I have a small house. So the office isn't multi-function. I have a physical divider. So I cannot see the other half. And the other half is my meditation, reading, journaling area. So I lay down on the floor with my notebook. So I'm like laying on the floor to write. And my dog came over and laid down beside me. Awesome. A few minutes later, my cat comes over and lays on my legs. So I'm like, okay, well, I am locked in place here. I cannot move, because if I move, I will disturb the animals. I think I wrote for an hour. And it was all ideas about a program that I'm hoping to offer soon. But the oomph was totally there by the end. Like, it was all there. And I think just giving myself that, what you just referred to as an exhale, like to have, like, this is a time to just slow down and let it be okay that I don't have any oomph and that I don't know what to do, and just write about the fact that I don't really have any oomph and I don't know what to do. And then as I was writing, I was starting to go, oh, maybe this, maybe that, maybe the other thing. And to accept that as a natural piece of it. Like, there wasn't anything wrong. I wasn't like, oh, that it's bad that I have no oomph. It's just like, and I just don't have any oomph.
Yeah. And the more that we put so much pressure on ourselves without realizing it. And we were trained really well to do that
Hmm.
for lots of reasons that I won't go into because I feel like I'm always taking us on a tangent. But and so what you did there really was take the pressure off, the pressure to do, because we are human beings and we the pressure can be slight, but it's like a ceiling or a block.
Hmm.
And so you were just like, okay, and you had your canine and your feline support, and then whoosh, there it was. And y- y- it doesn't really seem like, oh, if I'm just putting that little tiny pressure on myself, it should make that big a difference. But I really, I'm really become intrigued with how we program ourselves with language.
Oh, yeah.
And every time there's a should in there, it's like the hair on the back of
Hmm.
my neck goes, ooh, pay attention
Hmm.
to myself, to other people. Because even if we just change that word to I could or I might,
Yeah.
there's a shift that can have a huge ripple effect.
Absolutely. I'm also a word nerd. I love paying attention to language. And for a period of time when I became really aware of shoulds and need to in my language,
Hmm.
in my journal,
Hmm.
I would just circle them and I would just let the sentence live as it did. I need to do this. And I just circle the need to and on I'd go. But just like, oh, look at what you're telling yourself. Look at how you're saying that. And now I notice that I don't have nearly so many in there. I feel like
Awesome.
I'm looking forward to, I'm choosing to, I might do this, I'm considering. And it's not to say that you couldn't pull out any page of my journal and find either should or need to. Absolutely, you could. Um, but the awareness of it and to
Yeah.
shift to that choice position of like, maybe I will, maybe I won't.
Yeah. And I think, we are all works in progress. And sometimes I think falling into that fixed mindset a little bit, we feel like we're supposed to arrive somewhere. And when we arrive somewhere, besides, the big trumpet fanfare that's supposed to happen,
Hmm.
we also won't do those things we used to do. But that's not really life.
No.
It's getting better at going, ha, oops, did that again. Um, because it's all about releasing layers and that peeling the onion idea.
Yeah.
And I think I I don't really joke with my clients, but I think they think I'm joking when I say, I was the most insecure, scared kid you could imagine. So I get all of these things you're telling me. I understand it. Believe
Hmm.
me. And but I also know how I could move myself to a different place.
Yeah.
And I still am probably one of the most insecure people I know. It's just I go, "Oh, wait a minute, let me move to a different place. Oh, there we go. Ah, there we go."
Yeah. And that may tie into the words you shared with me. I can see a
Mm.
link. I'm not sure if it's the link you'll see. Um, I always ask my guests to share some words that have meaning for them. And your words were fix it forward. So tell me a little bit about fix it forward. What does that mean to you? And how did that come into your life?
Well, the fascination with the word forward started when I was a working student, which for a dressage professional. And the person that I worked with was excellent at teaching about biomechanics and being kind to the horse. I got so lucky because if anybody listening to this is a horse person in competitive dressage, it's hard to find that anymore. It can be a rough industry. But in order to get your horse to be able to move forward, it had to be balanced and aligned. There had to be a rhythm. There had to be a certain tempo. And then you would call it forward. It wasn't just a direction. It was so much more than that because technically you could get your horse to go sideways or backwards with a forward mindset. And then I was like, mindset. Ah. And, we we've all had stuff happen to us, and traumas, incidents, wounds, and they help create some of our manners of interacting and our character, but we don't have to live there. And the only place the past really lives is in our mind. So if we can take whatever we have to work with and focus forward, we can release a lot of what's weighing us down. And it gets easier to move in that forward direction when we pay attention to some of those things that I was taught through my writing, balance, alignment, harmony, and a sense of ease.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of why I love that Fix It Forward so much. But I'd love to hear what you think.
I didn't have any of the dressage elements to it, but this idea of like recognizing, that we are all going to be knocked off balance, and what can I learn from that, and how can I move forward with this, and how can I do it better next time, or do it differently next time, or this experimenting kind of piece of like, let me figure out what is true for me in this moment and how I want to fix it forward. Because it's really easy to get in our heads about shoulda, coulda, woulda. I wish I had done that differently. Oh, I didn't do that right. I didn't. And that's real life. I mean, everything is an interaction. If you and I were to sit down tomorrow and record an episode on the same theme, we would have a very, very different conversation, because you and I will be in different spots tomorrow. And so to spend all of our time looking at what we did in the moment and judging it and rehashing it and wondering about it isn't all that helpful. But to take a key insight from it of like, oh, if I could have given myself a little bit more compassion in that moment, I might have been able to be a little bit more accommodating of this other person's requests that I found unreasonable or whatever. That's how I could fix it for it.
And, when you were talking about that, and you gave an extraordinary example of, tomorrow, if for whatever reason we were trying to recreate this podcast or this conversation, oftentimes we don't give ourselves credit, because if we were to have a conversation again tomorrow, Colleen, it would go deeper, don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
And because we would have set the stage, and even if we thought we were going back to the beginning, there was like a familiarity now that not only you and I would have with each other, but we'd have with these concepts. And I don't come across many people that are extraordinary at giving themselves credit for where they've gotten themselves, for what they've overcome, for the choices that they've made, often in adopting a perspective that works for them.
Mm-hmm.
The trumpet fanfares go missing. They're MIA.
No fanfare. Instead of sending people balloons, we should just have the trumpet fanfare show up. Yeah. Have you met anyone who's good at that? Like, really, you would be like, wow, that person is really great at that. Because I know some people who I think are approaching, but I don't think I actually know anyone who I would say is really good at owning their magic in a way that's very steady, that like they can really, really see it.
Same. And I think, though, it's a great example of how our nervous system is wired, because we all have slumps. And again, we were put here in communities for a reason. And I think the more that we're able to reach out and recognize that we all struggle at times, hopefully it can be so the struggles aren't as deep, aren't as long, because we've gotten some skills over the years. But as long as we're on this planet, we're still going to struggle.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I've met people that have gotten a lot better, but I don't think I could meet anybody that I would say, oh yeah, they never beat themselves up.
Well, there we go. So all of the people who are listening who realize that they beat themselves up sometimes can know that's normal. It's okay. And also fix it forward.
Yeah. And that it doesn't mean you aren't good at what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Yeah. It's so interesting. There's I think it's Hafiz's quote. I wish that I could show you when you are in struggle or in darkness, the astonishing light of your being. I may not have that exactly right, but it's close.
Well, I love the gist.
Yeah. The idea of that we can see each other's lights so clearly. I mean, oh my gosh, I see it with my clients. I can just see this amazing, extraordinary brightness, and they don't. And if they could just see parts of it, just a little bit more of the astonishing light brightness of their own being, like wow, like amazing. Um, yeah. Well, this has been so fun. What an interesting conversation with you. I feel like I maybe had a coaching session today. If people wanted to learn more about you and your work, Kim, how could they do that?
Well, they could come and visit my website, which is confidencethroughconnection.com. And I have a place there where you can sign up for my weekly email newsletter. Um, I I spend some time. My biggest social media is Facebook. I have I guess they call it a page, a business page. It's Hidden Promise, and um, and then I have a group too from that's called Inner Journey Horsemanship that I would love to invite anybody that enjoyed this conversation to join that, because a lot of what we talked about here is the essence of that page.
Awesome. Well, I will link to all of that in the show notes. That'll be
All right, thank you.
well. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk. It was so fun talking to you.
Thank Colleen. I had a fabulous time.
So happy you were here. Thanks for listening to Unleashed at Work and Home. I invite you to come learn more at ColleenPilar.com, where you can be steady, be strong, and be long.